guys, this is Max from MixElite.com, and today you'll learn how to mix melodic trap vocals from start to finish. You can just be working with top line.
Walk around, all I feel is envy. Pockets get a mega by my heart.
Having some adlibs though when your main vocal is not playing.
Pockets get a mega by my heart. It's so empty. Feel like nobody
is always going to level up your production. So even if you don't have them, it's sometimes a good idea to even record them. They always bring a ton of emotion to the track. And also today I have some backing vocals, also called doubles.
All I feel is envy. But my heart is so empty.
So basically, every once in a while, you repeat the same thing, just recorded second time. You can always even do that by just recording the main vocal twice and then just cutting out those doubles. As you can see, I have one for left ear and one for right ear, but you can also do perfectly fine with just one. Let's first apply all of those guys to a new mixer track. You can do that by setting just the track mode to audio track and assigning it to a mixer track, and then just auto name each of those so it pops up like that. And then let's right away create a bus. So we mark all of them together with one empty track and control and left click on the empty one so we have a vocal bus. Let's start with an Autotune. We have a video how to choose the perfect settings. I will go with something about 5 to 10 retune speed. Of course, change it to auto tenor and choose the correct scale.
Walk around, all I feel is envy. Pockets get a mega by my heart. It's so empty. Walk around, all I feel is envy. Pockets get a mega by my heart. It's so empty.
Also increase the tracking since we have pretty clean vocal. And then I always apply equalizer to clean the vocal up before we start any compression and effects. I like to go with something more steep. I've also recently made a tutorial how to perfectly EQ your vocals using a perfect balance noise. Check this out if you haven't yet. But I usually will just play with the mids.
Walk around, all I feel is envy. Pockets get a mega by my heart. It's so empty. Feel like nobody around, going out to send me. I'm by myself in the field, me and my semi. Walk around, all I feel is envy. Pockets get a mega by my heart.
This vocal really doesn't need any harsh EQing. I'll apply some gain on the vocal bus to boost the overall volume.
Walk around, all I feel is envy. Pockets get a mega by my heart. It's so empty. Feel like nobody around, going out to send me. I'm by myself in the field, me and my semi. Walk around, all I feel is envy.
A ton of people really tend to increase the trebles if they want some brightness, but sometimes you don't want brightness, you want some presence. And this is actually what the PRS stands for. And it's usually a good idea to instead increase those frequencies over here, especially if later on we'll be applying De-Essing anyway to get rid of these harsh resonances. Now we always go and apply some compression, and you truly don't need any fancy compression since the way you process your vocals afterwards will always affect the tonal balance, so you can always change the EQ afterwards in case it needs less presence or more body, right? So with the initial EQ, we just want to shape the tonal balance of the vocal to fit it more into the instrumental. And later with the compressor, I always like to go with something like 8:1, and with the overall threshold, I want to make the compressor work on most of the accents and uneven peaks and leave the quieter lyrics unprocessed basically.
Walk around, all I feel is envy. Pockets get a mega by my heart. It's so empty. Feel like nobody around, going out to send me. I'm by myself in the field, me and my semi.
So we are even affecting the vocals in the quieter parts so we can let go a few dBs from the threshold still.
Walk around, all I feel is envy. Pockets get a mega by my heart. It's so empty. Feel like nobody around, going out to send me. I'm by myself in the field, me and my semi.
Right, so the overall vocal is basically quite flat. That will make it clear and audible when it comes to understanding the lyrics, for example. And then we can play with the attack. And this is something really overlooked, especially if you are lacking clarity and want your vocal to cut through the mix a little bit better. So if you increase the attack to something slow, meaning after 25 milliseconds, under 25 up to 8 milliseconds, it's medium speed of the compressor. And then under 8, it's quite fast, right? So some people say that, oh, from 1 millisecond, it's already getting slower. Not at all. 8 milliseconds is so short that you rarely will get anything through with such short attack. So if you want your vocal to cut through a little bit more, I would start with something like 25, going up to 40. So because of that, we now need to go with the threshold a little bit lower. Let's do an A/B test. This compressor will have no attack.
Walk around, all I feel is envy. Pockets getting mega, but my heart is still so empty. Walk around, all I feel is envy. Pockets getting mega, but my heart is still so empty.
Right, so sometimes your vocals will need a little bit more attack, such as like about 25 milliseconds and up. If you want those kind of peaks to cut through and make your vocal basically more piercing through the mix, right? That's something you need to play around with, and every vocal will need different settings. I used to always go with instant attack, so as we have here.
Pockets getting mega, but my heart is still so empty.
In that case, I would definitely also go with instant attack like that. And when it comes to the release, 200 milliseconds default amount is perfectly fine. It's always pretty hard to learn how to hear release of the compressor, but when compressing vocals, we never want the release to be long enough so it still applies compression to the next word, for example, right? So I'll keep it at 150, let's say.
Pockets getting mega, but my heart is still so empty.
Up to 250, of course, you should be perfectly fine. So let's hear what we've got so far.
Walk around, all I feel is envy. Pockets getting mega, but my heart is still so empty. Feel like nobody around, going out the same. I'm about
Make up gain after the compression is something I see a lot of people not understand still. As you could hear, after compressing, we needed to compensate for the volume lost during the compression. When you're using Fruity Limiter, you can actually just use the gain up because it actually works as a makeup gain. Afterwards, I really like to add some multiband compression in about 15 to 20% depth, depending on the style of the track.
walk around, all I feel is envy. Pockets getting mega, but my heart is still so empty. Feel like nobody around, going out the same. I'm by myself in the field, me and my semi.
This also will change a little bit of the tonal balance. So, now you could dive in back to the initial EQ or even apply EQ afterwards.
Walk around, all I feel is envy. Pockets getting mega, but my heart is still so empty. Feel like nobody around, going out the same. I'm by myself in the field, me and my semi.
Now we want to blend the vocal more with the track. It kind of sits right on top of it. It doesn't have any depth, right? Since our instrumental is kind of distorted, it's kind of dirty, then that's when I would also make our vocal a little bit more saturated. There's so many ways you could go around that. And something people like to do is apply Saturn, for example, only distorting the higher end of the vocal.
Walk around, all I feel is envy. Pockets getting mega, but my heart is still so empty. Feel like nobody around, going out the same. I'm by myself in the field, me and my semi. Walk around, all I feel is envy. Pockets getting mega, but my heart is still so empty. Feel like nobody around, going out the same. I'm by myself in the field, me and my semi.
I would not make the main vocal audibly distorted. I would prefer to add a little bit of the background dirtiness, basically. And if you don't have any fancy distortion plugins, you can use saturation knob. This is a pretty cool one. You just need to watch out to not squash the vocal even more. I would go with really, really subtle amounts. Also something like the Decapitator would work nice. It's also a good idea to use the same distortion that you used throughout the instrumental, right? So if you use the Decapitator on your instrument bus, for example, I would also go with the Decapitator on my vocals. Something you see also people do with reverbs, right? So you use the same reverb on all the tracks. They say that it helps to glue the track and make it sound as one. I don't know about that. Those are some niche tips. So let's just move on with the Decapitator.
Walk around, all I feel is envy. Pockets getting mega, but my heart is still so empty. Feel like nobody around, going out the same. I'm by myself in the field, me.
I don't really often use distortion on main vocals, but in that case, it really fits the overall vibe. All right, at this point, we want to get rid of this frequency resonances. So one way I really like to do it was through surgical EQ, where you just take a small band and scroll through the spectrum to find some harsh peaks.
Feel like nobody around, going out the same. I'm by myself in the field, me and my semi. My heart is still so empty.
Right, so we have one over here, and you could do that like this. Another area that causes a lot of trouble is treble, or precisely the S sounds, right? So they are usually anywhere from 4K to 7K, 8K hertz.
Walk around, all I feel is envy. Pockets getting mega, but my heart is still so empty.
And if I were to take it down, the whole vocal would start to sound darker.
Pockets get a mega, but my heart is so empty.
But in that moment,
So
it sounded a little bit better, right? So we would need to make it dynamic, and that's why we get rid of this EQ and rather use some De-Essing. There are a few cool free De-Essers online. You can also do one yourself with any simple multiband compressor by just going to highs and just compressing the high ends. Let's see how it would sound.
walk around, all I feel is envy. Pockets get a mega, but my heart is so empty.
See, like this exact part has been compressed already, right? So it's kind of hard to really make it surgical, right? Because the input is so quiet. I mean, we could turn all the pre-gains up and then just turn the post-gain down. Then you would also need to make sure that you turn off any compressors everywhere, right? So you only compress the high end like that.
Walk around, all I feel is envy. Pockets get a mega, but my heart is so empty. Feel like nobody around.
Or even only target the spectrum from 3.5 to 10 kHz and compress only the mid-range, right? So it would look like something like that. Right? So you just need to make sure that you don't hit any other notes that the ones that are actually troublesome. Right? So it sounds like that. There's also a preset in Maximus for De-Essing. Feel free to use that. I like to use Soothe for that. It will not only fix the De-Essing for me, it will also take down some of the other frequencies that are resonant. And now here what happens if I go too much on the Soothe. This is with medium.
All these thoughts inside of my head,
which is quite nice. And then if we go too hard,
all these thoughts inside of my head,
it makes the vocal dirty. So if you want brighter and clearer a vocal, you would go low on the De-Essing. This is counterintuitive, but if you want clearer sounding vocals, you actually go really low on the De-Essing or not do it at all. If you want dirty sounding vocals or, darker sounding vocals, you would go with really, really harsh De-Essing like that.
all these thoughts inside of my head.
This is of course way too much, right? So if I'd like to go with something dark and dirty, I would go to about 7. But now I really want to just have some simple De-Essing with some frequency resonance. I would go with something like 1 or 2.
All these thoughts inside of my head, I try to get rid of them. I try to get rid of them, but it doesn't help me. All these thoughts inside of my head.
If you're using the default preset, make sure to target the S frequency of your vocalist. Everyone has a different range. Every mic will have different problems with De-Essing. So just make sure you don't overdo it. But I think I always apply De-Essing on the vocals.
Walk around, all I feel is envy. Pockets get a mega, but my heart is so empty. Feel like nobody around, going out to send me. I'm by myself in the field, me and my semi. Walk around, all I feel is envy. Pockets get a mega, but my heart is so empty. Feel like nobody around.
Now you want some depth. I always go into our lowered spec and apply the Sidechain Reverb preset. It works right out of the box.
Walk around, all I feel is envy. Pockets get a mega, but my heart is so empty. Feel like nobody around, going out to send me. I'm by myself in the field, me and my semi.
And now the preset by default has a stock reverb, but I'd like to add some Valhalla verb. That's why I'll just delete that guy and connect it instead. It will also work right out of the box. You might need just to adjust some low cut, always low cut your reverb on your vocals, or even add an EQ before the reverb. So go to the EQ first and then go to the reverb and cut out all the low end. And sometimes you can even cut out some of the high end, since we don't want the very, very bright frequencies to be washed out, right? Then you can still play around with the amount, for example.
Walk around, all I feel is envy. Pockets get a mega, but my heart is so empty. Feel like nobody around, going out to send me. I'm by myself in the field, me and my semi.
And now you can apply the finishing EQ on your vocal. If you want to, clean up some low end from distortion, for example, or just, make some final tweaks and just do a slight surgical EQ, or just, slightly boost the top end like that for this kind of final tonal changes. I would suggest always listen to different systems. If in your car, for example, the vocals don't sound too bright in your car, etc. Now for the Adlibs, we can just go and copy the mixer state. For the Adlibs, I of course want to cut out more of the low mids because we don't need that body. We want the vocals to be more in the background. Also, you can turn up the retune speed a lot more if you want this, Travis Scott effect. Also, you can put up the retune speed a little bit more if you want even more creative effect like this.
Feels empty, so empty. Got a mega, but my heart is so empty. Feel like nobody.
Okay, and the next part, of course, is putting it down a few dBs under the vocal. And we also don't want that much of those trebles because this is what makes a vocal actually present, right? And again, we don't want the Adlibs to be present, so we can do, something like this. So we are just targeting those mids to high mids and something like that.
Got a mega, but my heart is so empty. Feel like nobody around, doing all the same.
And to fight it even more, we can put a little bit more harsh de-essing because this vocal is not in the front. Then for the sidechain reverb, I would actually go and just put the reverb without any sidechain because there's nothing wrong with washing out your Adlibs a ton. Make sure to low cut it. You can play around with the colors to make it a little bit brighter. Now it's still a lot in the front, and to separate it from the main vocal, we can use some panning. And while you could put it on the left or right, for Adlibs, it's best to make it moving from left ear to right ear. You can automate that, but we rather do it automatically with something like Pancake or Panomatic and make it a little bit faster and make the amount to 100%. It still has a little bit too much high end. Let's make it darker. And to fill a little bit more space with the Adlibs, I like to always add some delay to it. Usually in ping pong mode, I set it to band pass and increase the resonance over here. I like to put it before the reverb. Right, so with the delay, it actually starts to fill out a tone more of the background. Let's hear how it sounds.
Walk around, all I feel is envy. Pockets get a mega, but my heart is so empty. Feel like nobody around, doing all the same. I'm by myself in the film, me and my semi. Walk around, all I feel is envy. Pockets get a mega, but my heart is so empty.
Now the backing vocals are going to level up it even further. Let's hear it.
Walk around, all I feel is envy.
If you have two vocals, you'll put one all the way to the left and one all the way to the right. But not on the mixer track, but inside the slots. So we have a little bit more control over it. Let's again copy the mixer state. Now we'll definitely do a band pass, maybe not as harsh as we've done previously, but more focusing on the mids, okay? So since those are our backing vocals, we can keep them robotic sounding, right? Then for our compressor, we want to compress them a lot because we don't want them to stick out through the mix at all. We want to blend them together with the main vocal.
All I feel is envy, but my heart is so empty. Gonna understand me.
Also, as you can hear, we have some background noise. So we take down the gain.
All I feel is envy, but my heart is so empty. Gonna understand me.
Right, so we do harsh compression and usually some gate. We can leave the OTT, we don't need any distortion, and now we do actually very, very harsh de-essing because we want those high and still, so we don't cut it at all with the EQ over here, but we don't really want S doubles, right? Since those harsh frequencies don't really add nice harmonics, so we can definitely go harsh with the De-Esser. Maybe if we go harsh, we can use some vocals and De-Essing. We can use something like this.
All I feel is envy, but my heart is so empty. Gonna understand me. All I feel is envy, but my heart is still so empty.
Sounds pretty nice. And since our mix is getting pretty crowded already, let's hear.
Walk around, all I feel is envy. Pockets get a mech.
Because of the adlibs and all the reverb from the main vocal, we actually don't really need any reverb on the doubles. So let's get rid of it. And you know, you could put something like a room reverb that would just add some stereo richness to the sound with no decay.
All I feel is envy, but my heart is still so empty.
Right, it adds a little bit stereo data, and you know, we can see if it will work, but now we want to actually pan it all the way to the left. And now we're just going to copy the mixer's preset on top of our right channel and pan it all the way to the right. Both of those guys, we want to definitely put a lot lower than our main vocal, something like even minus 10 dB.
Walk around, all I feel is envy. Pockets get a mega, but my heart is still so empty.
Let's now try increasing a little bit of the room reverb we had on both of those.
Walk around, all I feel is envy. Pockets get a mega, but my heart is still so empty.
Works pretty nice. Most importantly, you can hear that we do not layer the S sounds.
But my heart is still so empty. But my heart is still so empty. But my heart is still so empty.
Right?
But my heart is still so empty. Feel like nobody around. Going out to send me. I'm by myself.
Now, if you have only one backing vocal, let's imitate that. You definitely don't want to balance it only to the one ear. What you want to do is apply some simple stereo. You can do that with free Ozone plugin and stereoize it. In first mode, I would go with something like 11 milliseconds and 100% width.
But my heart is still so empty. Walk around, all I feel is envy. Pockets get a mega, but my heart is still so empty. Feel like nobody around. Going out to send me. I'm by myself in the field. Me and my semi.
Now, the stereo width like this makes the high-end sound a bit louder, so you would need to maybe adjust the EQ a little bit. And then if you're using just one vocal like that, you could definitely use some room reverb to add some stereo to it.
All these thoughts inside of my head, I try to get rid of them. I try to get rid of them.
But let's come back to what we had previously.
All these thoughts inside of my head, I try to get rid of them. I try to get rid of them, but it doesn't help me at all. So I'm going.
Sounds quite nice. The last thing we want to do is sidechain from the vocal to your instrumental. I already have my instrumental routed to this sidechain bus. What we are going to do is copy our main vocal to an empty insert. This is really important. Now we rename it as vocal signal, just like that. Now we route it only to your main vocal and sidechain it to your instrumental. In my case, it's called sidechain. Then you need to delete all the wet effects from the vocal signal, and from the main vocal, you need to delete all the other effects. So it will look something like this, where we have Autotune, EQ, compressor, multiband compressor, saturation and de-essing on the vocal signal, and the wet effects on your second insert. Then on the sidechain bus, you want to apply something like track spacer or Sootly if you have, or there are also different free plugins for that. FL Studio also has built-in multiband sidechain preset for that, where you just need to go to map and add a new output with your vocal signal and route it to connect sidechain here and increase the sidechain. Then you of course need to link the vocal sample to your vocal signal track. Right, so what's happening, we are taking down the frequencies of the instrumental when the vocal is playing. If you have track spacer, you could do it like that. Just in the processing, set the sidechain to vocal signal and it will work right away as well. And then let's hear it in the mix.
Walk around, all I feel is envy. Pockets get a mega, but my heart is still so empty. Feel like nobody around. Going out to send me. I'm by myself in the field. Me and my semi.
Now, if you haven't secured your 3 gifts when joining Mix Elite Academy, make sure to do so down in the description below. Inside, you get instant access to all full-length courses we've ever released, including vocal mixing course, which is way more in-depth than what you've seen today. You also get access to dozens of premium sample packs, our private community, and included, you get weekly live coaching sessions and unlimited in-depth feedback on your music and mixes. Now we have the vocals mixed, you need to check this video next.